Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh Epstein, and I'm the marketing specialist for the TDA Perks program. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be discussing how to set your practice strategy and what's needed to reach your goals and realize your overall vision. Presenter today is Tommy Newton. He is the principal with Xite Realty. Xite is a longtime Perks vendor, and actually they recently participated in our new office symposiums this month in San Antonio, North Texas, and Houston. This webinar is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to reference it later on. And I want you to keep in mind that the TDA Perks program endorses close to 30 vendors for you to utilize, as well as a fantastic resource section complete with archived journal articles and podcasts. And of course, we archive all of our webinars here. I want to let you know too that there'll be a Q&A period at the conclusion of the session. So you can ask questions then, or you can feel free to chime in and ask questions during the presentation, but we'll make sure that your questions do get answered at the end. And without further ado, Tommy?
Great, thank you, Josh, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll try to keep today's webinar short and concise. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and our company, Xite Realty, exactly what we do, and then what we've laid out is 5 tips, things really to think about before you start your own practice, or if you're starting additional practices. Just some things that we have seen and experienced with working with over about 100 dental startups per year, mainly in the state of Texas, but also on a national level. A little bit about myself. My name is Tommy Newton. I've been practicing commercial and medical real estate for more than 11 years. I'm from Longview, Texas, which is East Texas, and I went to school at the University of Texas, and then when I graduated there, I moved to Dallas, and I worked for a corporate real estate firm where all we did was represent large corporations in their real estate transactions. Worked all over North America and in Europe. Learned a lot there, had to provide a very robust scope of services to those companies. In 2007, 2008, when the subprime crisis happened, commercial real estate changed a little bit. And I'm telling you this because I'll tell you how we ended up representing dentists. When it changed, what we saw out in the market was construction, lending, cranes over projects were all still over healthcare projects. So we thought, well, that's kind of odd because banks have pulled back on construction for most other types of commercial real estate projects, especially residential projects too, multifamily. So we started looking into it a little bit closer and said, what's going on here? So we're a data-driven company. We went and pulled data from 2001 to 2010 for dentists to try to understand, why does this look like a recession-proof industry? And what we found from 2001 to 2010, that dentists were graduating dental school, they were starting their own practices, and they were able to get loans, and it was about a 3% increase year over year. And they went right through the subprime. They never even noticed happened. So that was a very strong indicator of what we thought was a very strong market. And then we also noticed that, dentistry's changed when it comes to site selection over the past 15, 20 years. It used to be that dentists were in medical office buildings and medical villages, and they'd be kind of crowded around each other. Now what you've seen is dentists, optometrists, vets, urgent cares, ERs, dermatology, they're all getting closer to the patient base. They're going to retail centers. They're getting closer to the community. They're providing closer and better and more efficient access to care. So when that happened, we thought, well, there's got to be some sort of formula to how you pick one spot over another spot. Just like CVS or Chipotle or Starbucks, they have a demographics recipe on how they go about picking their sites. Well, they have customers. Dentists have patients. There's criteria you can look up by way of insurance, CMS, along with the demographics criteria that a typical retailer will look at, and you can blend that into a model to understand why an area shows a need for a general dentist or an endodontist or an orthodontist versus another area. So that's how we got into healthcare real estate. We noticed that need. We noticed nobody was doing that. We noticed there should be a data-driven approach to this, just like major retailers. But instead of providing those services for commercial and retail real estate, we customized it for healthcare real estate, and dentistry is where we started. And what this is called is the retailization of healthcare from a real estate standpoint. So what our company does is all we do is represent physicians. The majority of those are dentists, and we focus on site selection, demographics, lease and purchase negotiations. We also have a project management company too. We'll talk about that at some point. But that's our main criteria. A little bit about our company, Xite Realty. Founded in 2013, February of 2013. We have 4 offices: Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. We are the only real estate company that's endorsed by the TDA Perks program. Like I talked about before, everything we do is a data-driven approach to real estate, and the majority of what we do for dentists is startups, expansions, relocations, and multi-location expansion strategies for those dentists that have a plan to do, several locations over a number of years. Excuse me. So here are 5 vision casting tips for starting a practice. And the reason that we thought this webinar and these subjects were so important is because a recent survey from the ADA states that over 76% of dentists are sole practitioners and another 15% are partners. So for almost every dentist, ownership becomes a consideration at some point in his or her career. Dentistry is very exciting. It's a very entrepreneurial industry. It's really great, speaking personally, to be able to work with dentists because for the most part, dentists are always thinking about how to do things a little bit better and have ownership and provide the best service to their patient base, to their community. So with that, since many dentists, even if they may decide not to own their own practice, it's definitely something that they're going to think about at one time or another. And what we hope in our goals for today's webinar is to give you some ideas, some things to think about if you are assessing possibly opening your own practice. Number 1, start with your personal preferences. What I mean by this, many times we'll have a new dentist, an associate, come into our office to learn about how we go about the real estate process. And I'll say, we'll just talk about Austin as an example because that's the office that I reside in. We'll say, well, where would you like to be, Mr. and Mrs. Dentist? And they'll say, I'll go anywhere around Austin. I don't care. I just want to go to a good spot. That's a great attitude to have. Being flexible, understanding that location is very important, understanding that they'll make the sacrifices to make a good business profitable and positive and provide a good service. And we appreciate that. But you're almost doing yourself a little bit of a disservice with that type of wide geographic area that you're willing to go to, because what we find is it's not necessarily true. You're making a very big decision. You're making a $500,000 commitment when you sign a lease. Most leases are 10 years with a couple 5-year renewal options. Most of the useful life of construction by way of depreciation, your equipment, infrastructure, you're looking at a 20-year commitment there. So we really ask our clients where do you see yourself living? Where do you see yourself raising your kids, going to school? Where do you want to be and why? And where you want to be there for a long time. And that's important because if you're going to, open a practice in North Austin and you live down in South Austin, you could be looking at an hour commute each way, 5 days a week over 10 years. That could really wear on you. Some people like to be in the outskirts, more rural. Some people like to be, downtown urban. Some are more suburbs. So you need to think through those things. They're very important. And with a data-driven approach, with going through the process the appropriate way, with surrounding yourselves with a good team, with using resources like the TDA Perks program has, you can find a very quality spot that has a need for a dentist and set yourself up for success within a reasonable proximity of an area that you would like to live and really plant your roots. So think through that. It's important. And have a couple ideas. You can be flexible, but don't just say I'm okay with the entire state of Texas. It's just too much to assess. It's too big of an area. You'll get confused, you'll get mired down, and you'll never really get down to a process to where you can wrench into an area, a centroid, and it makes sense because the data sent you there. So just a few things to think about. Number two, define the patient base that you want to serve. I'm sure everybody on this webinar right now is an associate somewhere, or they have been treating dentists for quite some time, and hopefully they've had the opportunity to treat patients of all different areas: Medicaid, CHIPS, fee-for-service, private insured, and that's important. Besides the people that you work with every day and your family, this is going to be a segment of the population that you spend most of your time with. It's important to understand what you're getting into and what patients you like to serve, you like to be around, and depending on if you're dealing with government insurance or private insurance, what you understand by reimbursables and what you feel most comfortable with. And with Medicaid and CHIPS, you're probably going to be a little more volume. Sometimes fee for service, private insured, you get to do some different cases, and you're dealing with a little bit different type of person from a socioeconomic standpoint. There's a lot of good reading material as well if you want to research on your own. I have a few resources here from the ADA. TDA Perks has a lot they can really put in front of you to help you out. But part of what you're doing right now as an associate, just take notice of what you like and what you don't like when it comes to the patient base that you're treating. That's really important, because when you go through a site selection process and you do it with a data-driven way, which you're going to hear me say 100 times on today's webinar, one of the main things that we're identifying is where a certain patient base resides, where they shop, where they go to school, where they go to church, how they travel, where they commute. That's all important because that's who we're trying to capture. Tip 3, prepare your personal finances for a practice loan. This is something that you can do now, and it's really very simple. It's just being fiscally responsible. So the good part about being a dentist is you are one of the safest industries in the country. Bank of America and Wells Fargo are two of the largest financial institutions that provide startup loans to dentists. Their default rate for startup dentist loans is 1%. Veterinarians are a little less than that, and actually the safest underwritable startup is a funeral home, believe it or not, less than a veterinarian. Compared to a startup restaurant, 80% default rate. Commercial real estate firm like I have, closer to 40%. So you're in one of the safest industries possible. So pat yourself on your back. Great idea, being a dentist. But you still got to get a loan from a lender. And a lender just does not give money to anybody. And one reason you guys are one of the safest industries is because some of these institutions have looked into dentistry deeply and they understand it. So therefore, they're going to have certain criteria that you need to meet in order to qualify for their loan. Things that you can do now so that when you do decide to start the process, if you do, you're going to look really good in the eyes of the bank. You're going to be a very underwritable subject. Your personal bank accounts. Keep a good cash flow in there. Don't write hot checks. Your credit score. There are many different websites that you can go to, that you can sign up for a nominal fee, and you can check your credit score all the time. They can give you ideas on how to improve your credit score. They'll send you alerts when your credit score starts to drop. But you always want to have a good credit score. It's one of the main criteria that the lender is going to look at. In order to keep your credit score high, don't miss monthly payments or premiums, whether that's credit cards, whether that's a car loan, a mortgage, rent, any of those types of items you need to stay on top of. It's very easy. Most banks these days, you can very easily set up a reoccurring payment accounts. So do those things. Put it on your calendar. Just make sure you don't miss those things. Because believe it or not, even if you're not hit with a fee, usually banks or any sort of institution, they are going to report you on your credit immediately once you are late on anything, and it will knock you. It will dock you. You can get it back though. So always pay attention to those. They are important. They will hurt you or they can help you. Some people, some dentists that we represent, they've done a great job. They are people where their parents have paid for everything cash. Their grandparents did it that way. They don't have hardly any debt, if any at all, besides their student loans. But their credit score is low because they just don't have any sort of credit profile. They've never taken debt and paid it. So if you haven't, getting a credit card and staying up to date with it and paying it off every month can be a little thing that you can do to help out. And I'll tell you this, any sort of lending institution can give you just a few pointers that you can do besides these in order to increase your credit score and make yourself look good in the eyes of the bank. Before you can start your practice, before you can get a loan, you usually have to have at least 1 year of working experience as an associate. It's important for a couple reasons. One, you're showing that you're fiscally responsible, that you're able to, be an adult, be out of school, be a professional, go to work, hold a job, pay your bills. So all that's important. It also shows that you are a dentist. You can handle being a dentist. You can handle being employed. You need that work experience. So all those are important. Usually, you got to have at least 1 year before you can get underwritten by a bank. Create a business plan. A business plan is good for several reasons. One, you're usually going to need it for the lender. Two, it's a great tool to make you think through what you want your practice to be. A business plan is going to have a mission statement. It's going to have the culture that you're thinking about. It's going to have what type of employees that you want to hire, the patients that you want to see, things that you are going to do to differentiate yourself from the competition, things you're going to do that are special. It's a great working document to have yourself think through, what do I want to be? What's important to me? What are my goals? Dental schools actually will have some resources. Some of the area colleges will have them. TDA Perks can point you in the right direction. Here at Xite Realty, we have a few resources we can introduce you to that all they do is help dentists write up business plans. So you can always reach out to us, and we're happy to make those introductions. And then I want to set expectations for startup expenses. So this is really important. Here's the next slide. This is probably one of the questions we get all the time. How much is it going to cost me to start my own practice, start my own company? What we have here is expectation setting. As of right now, you're looking at $500,000 to $550,000 loan for a startup practice. You can do them for less, but right now, what we're seeing, and part of this has to do with the increase in the values of commercial real estate, retail real estate, rental rates. These loans have gone up. So for the most part, you're seeing $500,000 to $550,000 for a loan size. That's broken up into three major components: construction cost, working capital, and dental equipment. Construction cost, a low end, $90 per square foot, a high end, $120 per square foot. That's for the interior construction of your space. Most of the time when you rent a space, it was either an old space and you're going to tear out everything on the inside and build all new, or it's a brand new space, what we might call white box. It only has a floor, 4 walls, and a ceiling, nothing else. No air conditioner, no plumbing, no nothing else. So this is all for the interior construction of your space. For this example, as you can see in the bottom left of the screen, for the sample total, we're using a 2,400 square foot dental office. A 2,400 square foot dental office is going to be somewhere between 6 to 8 operatories. A good rule of thumb to understand how big of an office that you need, how many square feet you need to occupy, is if you want 4 operatories, say put 400 square feet per operatory. So that would be a 1,600 square foot space. 2,400 square feet would be a 6 operatory practice. So that's just a great way for you to think through, I'm planning on having this many operatories, this is what I'd like, how many square feet would I need in order to fit all that in there. Now, of course, an operatory is not 400 square feet, But what that does is it takes into account the circulation factors of your hallway, your lobby, your reception, your office, bathrooms, lab, all those things to fit inside the box. So here we're taking on the low side $90 per square foot. So if you took $90 per square foot over the 2,400 square foot space, you're looking at $216,000 in interior construction cost. Dental equipment, $120,000 to $220,000. Just yesterday, I saw a quote from Henry Schein for a new office. It was $164,000. So they vary in between there. 220 definitely the high side, 120 the lower side. And I'm going to talk about some things on how you can reduce costs up front as we go. Dental supplies, that's usually going to vary as your patient volume varies. Working capital, that's the first few months. That's paying for your employees. That's paying part of your salary. That's paying for advertising costs. It's just paying for the monthly bills that you're going to incur, utilities, etc. Marketing, usually part of working capital. Sometimes it's outside of that. Very important. You know, $20,000 to $30,000 a year is a pretty hefty and a solid, reasonable marketing budget. Exterior signage, tenants are responsible for the cost of their exterior signage. You get the rights from the landlord, but they have to purchase it themselves and have it installed themselves. So you're looking for, signage is not cheap for backlit signage, and the landlord will determine what type of sign you put up there, because there are certain, usually it's mandated by the city on how that sign is going to be, whether it's offset or it's backlit or it's not lit, all those things. So there will be a signage criteria you have to follow, which you'll maximize, but that's why you're looking at $10,000 to $20,000 for a sign. So this kind of connects in startup expenses. This is what I'm talking about with the increase in real estate costs. How do you adjust for those higher rents? Rents have probably gone up about $5 per square foot on an annual basis just over the last 24 to 36 months in major metropolitan areas. And really a lot of tertiary markets like a Lubbock, a Midland, Odessa, Longview, Tyler, Victoria, those rental rates are not much less. So how do you go about getting the prime spot next to all those other co-tenants and those retailers that drive traffic that hopefully drive your increase in patient base? How do you do that? How do you compete with them? Because think about this. If you're going and looking for a very good spot, which location is important, you're not just competing against other dentists. You're competing against all those other publicly traded companies, those retailers that have very strong balance sheets and very strong brands, that the landlord knows those brands and want those brands, and those brands bring in more people, and those brands also bring in more tenants. So you're competing for some of those really good spots with people like that. So you want to be there. How do you go about competing with them and being able to pay enough rent in order to be in that center? Well, you do things by way of, if you have 4 or 6 operatories, you don't equip out all of them day one. Equip out 2 of them. Get your patient volume up, and then equip out the 3rd, and then the 4th. You can save a lot of capital that way. That's one of your major ones right there. Just use all the professionals around you, consultants, to talk to and understand what you can do to be smart about your costs. I'll tell you this, your lender. Usually a lender that does a lot of dental lending will have a graduated payback. Therefore, the first 3 years will be a smaller premium payback on your mortgage, and the last 3 years, it'll be back-end loaded. It'll be much higher because by then you can afford it because you've got a very stable and full patient base. So there's a lot of things that the industry does in general to help you out, but there's some that you can do to help yourself and still get those prime spots. Factor in lead time. When I meet with a new associate, many times, maybe we're at the TDA Texas program or at one of the symposiums that they put together that are very helpful, by the way. And I say, when would you like to see patients? Oh, I'd like to see patients, in a year and a half or 2 years or something, maybe a year. I got plenty of time. That's what I'll hear. Well, it's not really the case. Real estate transactions take a long time. And in a very hot market that's a landlord's market, you sometimes will be working on a few different locations before you can get one actually nailed down, leased, and executed. So on average, you're looking 9 to 18 months for the entire process. From the day that you start talking to a real estate company and a lender and go through all the data, the research, the market study, the negotiation of the economics of the lease legal lead negotiation, do your drawings, your design, and then do permitting, and then on into construction and equipment installation. All of that, 9 to 18 months. And here's why it can be 18 months. In the economy we have right now, the Dow Jones is 21,000. Rental rates are going up. There's a ton of development. There's 110 people a day moving to Austin, for an example. Many times, some of the best options don't exist yet. They're what we call proposed buildings. A landlord has gone out, bought a piece of property, had some drawings made for a building, and he's going to build that building. But usually, what we call that is spec development. In order to get a loan for spec development, they have to have 51% of the building pre-leased. So they're trying to get people in there to sign a lease, and once they do, then they can start construction. So many times you may have to wait, even though you sign a lease today, the landlord may not be able to build that building for 6 months or a little bit longer. It usually takes about 5 months for a landlord to build the shell of a building, the walls, the floor, the parking lot, the ceiling, etc. So because of that, in order to get the best spot, and you're making a 10 or 20 year commitment, it's worth waiting to get the right spot. But if you're thinking that you want to see patients in a year, it's time to start now. So just something to take in mind. Many people don't think it takes that long, and they'll finally get started and finally start talking to professionals and understanding what's going on, and they'll be a little taken back when they realize that how extensive the timeline really is. Employment circumstances. I think this is important. Most associates I talk to sign a 1-year contract, with their dentist, with their employer. Non-compete clauses are very real, very important, and can be very costly. You're usually going to have a non-compete clause in any dental employment contract, but you want to understand it completely, and it needs to be reasonable. I have seen some that are very aggressive where they may have a 10-mile radius non-compete around the location. 10 miles, when you say it, it doesn't sound that big. But when you put it on a map as a radius, it's very big. It can knock out almost an entire city as a place for you to go. So, and what we suggest is a 3 to 5 mile radius is reasonable. 3 actually is what I would prefer. Be very careful if you work for a regional group or a corporate group. Make sure that that radius is not on every one of their locations. It's only on the location that you work at. So just understand that, and usually non-competes are 1 to 2 years. Anything beyond that is excessive. If you can get it less, get it less. And then this is all important because I personally had a non-compete when I left the company to start this company with my partners, and I sat down with attorneys, and it cost a couple $1,000s to get their opinion, and they basically said it's very real. Don't mess with it. Even though Texas is a right-to-work state, it's a legal document that you are signing with very clear rules, and if you break them, it will cost you a lot of money. You will lose that lawsuit. So I do not suggest even trying to break one or get around one or anything. Always get a legal opinion if you're thinking about something and you're not sure. Always have an attorney look over your employment contract, make sure you completely understand it. You need to ask your soon-to-be employer if you don't understand it about that contract. If the answer they give you doesn't make sense to you, consult an attorney. It's worth the fee to make sure you're protecting yourself. That company's protecting themselves. They're the one that drafted that agreement. Odds are that agreement is not necessarily in your favor. But you do want an agreement because you need to have your wages, your benefits, et cetera, all that in writing. Moonlighting. Moonlighting is important for a few reasons, and it actually goes back to the slide before where I talked about how to reduce your expenses, how to take that really nice real estate, most of the time you're not going to have a full schedule right off the bat when you start your practice. You may be able to fill out 2 days at first. You need to moonlight those other 3 days. It'll take pressure off of you financially, mentally. It's just good to have that constant practice and seeing patients. You're always getting better and educating yourself. So moonlighting is a great thing to always keep in mind. And the reason it's underneath this section with employment circumstances is because don't burn bridges. It's great if you can be up front, if you feel you can, with your employer, that this is your dream, you want to go do this, probably just like they had 10, 20 years ago. That way you have that door open if you need to. And then as your schedule fills up, you can phase out of moonlighting and then eventually be just full time at your place. And that's really easy. Just have your office manager, your employees, your front desk schedule appropriately, make sure they're scheduling and filling up days and not just letting people pick all over the place. It's very easy stuff to do, but it can save you a lot of money, a lot of time. Plan one step at a time. So I love it when I meet a new associate and they say, I want to open up 5 offices, 1 office every year. I'm going to take over the world. I love it. It's great. It's exciting. But it's important to take it one step at a time, get your practice and prove it up. Make sure the model works. Make sure it's going to be scalable. Make sure you get the back office in place, get systems in place if you're planning on doing multiple locations. As of right now, if you're just thinking about starting up a practice, equipment and supply guys, marketing, general contractors, construction, insurance, all these are professionals that you're going to surround yourself with and provide a very valuable service as you go through the process. However, right now, there's not a lot that they can really do for you. Really, it's real estate and lending to get through the process for a while. Once you start getting close to having a transaction being executed, that's when you start bringing these guys in. So it's always good if you want to speak with them, but for the most part, you're probably not going to be able to get too much out of that right now. Your strategy prepares you for, and what this is really just, in conclusion, work through a mission statement, understand your vision, think about where you want to be long term. And that's part of just working through the business plan. You meet with lenders, you meet with industry professionals, you take advantage of the different resources that people like the TDA Perks program have to provide you and educate you. You use people like Xite Realty as a resource when you have questions about something. You see a property that you like, you have colleagues that have questions. Use those. They're out there. We're not dentists, but we're as close to a part of the community as we can be. All we want to do is help. Whether we get to work for you or not, selfishly, it benefits us for the dental industry to be strong. The last thing I want is for someone to go out there, not use the resources that they have, put themselves in a tough position, and end up with a failure or end up with a negative dentist that therefore then says things to the rest of the dental community that may not be true. If they just would have done it the right way, taken the appropriate steps, I mean, you need a good, strong dental community. You guys are all competing, I understand, but you're also supporting each other. And then I say, we're a data-driven company, so I preach this all the time. Let demographics drive the decision-making process. Emotions are going to be involved. Common sense is going to be involved. But when you're going through a process that takes that long, you don't remember every single thing that you did. But if you do a process and you let the research and the data and the analytics drive the way, and you know that it makes sense and you know how you got there, when you're sitting there signing that lease and signing that purchase order for equipment and signing that loan, those loan documents, you have confidence in the decisions that you're making because you've done the right things, you've taken the time, you've been responsible, you've done the research. So in closing, if you ever need help with a dental office or you just have anything, please reach out to us. Please reach out to Josh and TDA Perks. We're always here to help. We're happy to meet with you one-on-one. We have 4 offices here in the state of Texas. We work national in scope. If we can't meet one-on-one, we go through WebExes like this all the time to show how the process works and what deliverables look like, what a competition analysis looks like, et cetera. I know that TDA is going to have this as a recording for everybody to listen to later. And then also just looking forward, we do these webinars all the time, both ourselves and then we get to do them with TDA Perks. We're going to have one coming up September 28th from 12 to 12:30. what it's going to do is it's going to pick up where I left off. It's going to talk more about how to find the right location for your dental office. And one of my partners, one of our principals here, Santi Hathaway, he's in our Dallas office. He will be giving that. And once again, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking some time to listen to this webinar. I really hope it was helpful. Thank you, Josh. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. Again, it's extremely informative. I'd like to maybe go in a little bit more in depth. I mean, the whole process is daunting, and basically, handling both the planning, the bidding, vendor selection. I mean, that's a lot of work, and I know that one of the great things that you guys provide is the project management aspect, where you literally can handle all of that for a TDA member. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. About 3 years ago, we do a lot of different sectors of real estate. In 2010, freestanding ERs, legislation changed where it allowed emergency physicians to open their own practice, open their own emergency rooms. And those are very complex builds. We had some of our physicians come to us and say, hey, we go out and we find the spots and you guys help us and we lease and we buy and all that. But this construction, it's tough. I mean, it's our first time to do this. We have our normal jobs and all that. Could you start a project management program where I could basically have an independent project manager that's my employee, whose fiduciary responsibility is only to me, and their job is to drive down cost, drive down timeline, bring value engineering ideas to the table, control everybody, be a single point of contact and report to me, and I know that they have my back, because I just don't trust just taking the superintendent's word for it, because his responsibility is not to me, it's to his employer. And so Donovan and Josh at TDA Perks knew that we did that and said, hey, guys, we're getting some questions where these startup dentists, they're working, they're going through this for the first time. A dental construction build is not that easy. There's equipment, there's lenders, there's GCs, there's attorneys, there's insurance. There's a lot of different professionals involved, and they're all involved at different times, and they coordinate with each other sometimes, and sometimes they don't. And how do I bring all that together? And in the meantime, I'm sitting here working still 8 to 5, 8 to 6. It's just really difficult to keep up with, and I'm learning as I go. They were asking for that same type of resource. So what we did is we took that and we just specialized it for dentistry. So we have a sister company called Xite Project Management, and what they do is they would work hand in hand with us. After we find a spot, we negotiate the lease. They kind of pick up there and coordinate all those professionals and be that single point of contract and report back to the dentist and say, hey, these are the bids that we got from these 3 different general contractors. I've vetted all of them. They all have dental experience. I think they're all very capable. We actually went through their bid process. We found out that one of them here had more in the plumbing and one of them here didn't. We figured out what the issue was. It's an apples to apples bid pro forma. My opinion, doctor, is that this is the one you should go with because they're not the cheapest, but also their timeline is a little bit faster. They're right in the middle. I felt like their experience was sufficient. So, and then we'll be there when there's problems, there's change orders. It's like having your own construction specialist as an employee for the duration of the project. And then when it's done, you don't need them anymore. They're gone. So, that's one thing that we do, all over for our clients. And usually we're able to reduce direct cost and to reduce timeline significantly. Not to mention just quality of life.
Yeah, I agree, Tommy. I think that's a great point. I mean, it's all about saving time. It's finding the right vendors that you can trust. And of course, with TDA Perks, and we've been endorsing, Xite for several years. So again, that means that they are a trusted company through us. Now, I've got there's just a couple more minutes actually. We've got about 10 more minutes here, but I do see another question that's popping up, and it's regarding startup versus acquisition, Tommy. And
okay.
Again, basically, quickly, if you can go into, why would I go startup versus acquisition?
Sure. Acquisitions are great if you can make them work. Usually the acquisitions that we see that work are those where the associate has worked for that dentist for a long time and there's a personal relationship there. a true transition is going to happen. That associate knows a lot of those patients, knows those other employees, knows the hygienist. So those work. More times than not, an associate will come to me and say, yeah, I want to own my own practice. I'm going to do an acquisition. I say, okay, come back to me in 6 months when you don't find anything, because usually what happens is all the really good offices for sale, and it's definitely a seller's market, well, they get taken to corporate right away. The good ones get picked by corporate. Corporate pays more money, so all the brokers take them to corporate immediately. So then what's left over is just that, the leftovers. And there's a reason that they're left over. The equipment is 20 years old. It needs some spit and polish. That dentist wants out of there. The price is too high. The location isn't that good. There's a lot of things going on there that somebody didn't pick it, but that's what you had to pick from. And yet, there are way more buyers than there are sellers. So that drives the price up to what I feel is unreasonable. And most time you're going to lose. Even though these practices are selling somewhere between 56 and 60% of annual revenue, you're going to lose a lot of that patient base when you change. And then you're always trying to put a Band-Aid on everything. And now all of a sudden you're the boss, and the staff has been doing things a different way for 20 years, and you're trying to bring your vision in to something. It's really hard. I mean, you're trying to change the direction of a ship that's been going a certain direction for a long period of time, and you're the new kid on the block. It's very difficult to do. And if you can get one that has the right location for you, the right patient base, isn't going to have a significant investment in technology and equipment. The layout probably needs to be different. If you think about it, we do a lot of things different now than they did 20 years ago in dentistry. So there's just a lot of boxes that have to line up and be checked, not to mention just price, to make happen. And usually what I find is that when a dentist is coming to me, they're not coming to me to go just take over somebody's. They're coming to me to make something their own. This is their baby. This is their passion. This is their dream. And they have taken notes and seen what they like and what they don't like about where they are and where they practice currently, and how they serve their patients, and how they do this and how they do that. And they've got this, I mean, everything down from just the color of the design of the name into just, there's just so many factors that, you're going to think about. And when you get to start from a clean slate, it really is yours. You're hiring all the people that you want. You're interviewing them. You're making that layout. You're buying the equipment that you want. You're getting, just all those things. It's you. It's the reason you're putting all this time in it. It's not just easy, to do this. So you're putting time into it. You're making these decisions, and it's really educational. It gives you just a lot of, I think, confidence in yourself to see something from its infancy to maturity like that. And so usually what happens is it's just hard to find an acquisition you do, but most time those people end up coming back to us and saying, I'm ready to do a startup. And their concerns were they came in with 0 patients. But if you go through the process, you do it the right way, and you take your time, you set yourself up for success, you'll be just fine. And that's not me. That's the 1% default rate talking. So my 2 cents, of course, I'm biased. We don't handle acquisitions. We only work with dentists for, startups, other locations, relocations. But that's just, Josh, that's just what I've seen in the market over the past several years. But whatever a dentist wants to do, that's their prerogative. I just think that's where most of them end up.
Excellent. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a great question, by the way. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions here right now. Again, this webinar is going to be recorded, or it is being recorded, I should say, and we'll actually send it out via e-blast, so you'll have a chance to, listen to this again and actually just come back and like I said, it'll be archived. And one of the great things about Xite Realty is that it's not just, it's a great service, but it's an amazing resource. They provide us, this is not their first webinar that they've done through Perks. They've done a lot of webinars. They produce a lot of, journal articles that are actually in the TDA journal, and they're there in the resource section of the TDA Perks website. So again, they're a friend, they're trusted, and again, they're more of a resource and a benefit than anything else. So, I definitely want everyone to make sure that they can get in touch with Tommy. And I want you to keep in mind too that, I'm a direct line to Tommy. So at any point you can call me here at the TDA, and my number here at the TDA is 512-443-3675. And feel free to shoot me an email anytime. It's josh@tda.org. And always keep in mind as well that Perks is a member benefit. And it's just one of the many reasons of why to be, involved in the TDA. And we appreciate your membership. And again, there's about 25, almost 30 different indoors vendors that go through the same process as Xite did. It's a very stringent process, and I definitely hope that you can trust the program and obviously come back and learn a little bit more about what we do and how we can help you out and all the events that we do provide. So with that, I'm going to conclude the webinar. And Tommy, we just really appreciate everything you guys do, whether it's attending the events or doing these webinars for us and helping educate our members. And it's a big deal. And again, we really do appreciate everything you're doing. And do you have anything else quickly to add, or?
No, sir. No, I think we're good to go. Thanks again for allowing us the opportunity. We really appreciate the partnership.
Yeah, of course. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for spending your lunch with us. And, first and foremost, again, thank you for being a member as well. And I do want to just say, it's a 4th of July weekend. Have a good time. Be safe. And just have a great holiday. And we're going to conclude. So thank you again for attending. And take care. Until next time. Bye-bye.